Okay, so I've finished remediating our basement from mold, and I'm now going to put it all back together and be in the process of remodeling the entire basement. And the first thing I'm going to do is we have these concrete slabs that kind of come out from the wall. They're a little annoying, but I'm going to build a little frame around it and kind of drywall around it, so it's going to act as a little bit of a ledge. And since we had mold down here, I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I'm going to be sealing up everything pretty properly. So let's go ahead and get started. When you're doing a remodel and you have any kind of repairs, specifically to any kind of drywall, you want to make sure that when you're cutting out the drywall that you use something to guide your cut with that razor blade to make it straight. Making it straight is going to allow you to cut the replacement drywall and cut it a lot more square so it can fit into that spot. If it's unlevel and uneven, which I'll show you here in a second, it makes it really challenging and time consuming. Lots of times when you make a cut, you can use that same piece and put it back, but if you're going to be repairing it and putting a new piece of drywall in, you want to make sure you make that cut as smooth, straight, and symmetrical as possible. So I was able to make a cut right here, and so we can kind of see how this fits in here. Okay, pretty good. So that was able to fit, so that makes these gaps a lot smaller. And when I do screw it into the wall, I'm going to lift that up a little bit to make it even more snug. But this allows, when you do the spackling, that it's going to look a lot better after you paint it. An example of what not to do is cut open the wall or the ceiling without any kind of tool to guide you, and it makes it really challenging to cut the drywall to replace it to fit well. And what that happens is it causes these big gaps to occur, and when you do the spackling on this, it makes it a lot more time consuming and potentially not look as good when you finish it. So it's something to consider when doing the drywall. Also, as part of the remodeling, I'm going to go up through all of the walls and patch up all of the marks on our walls, on the ceilings. We have little like random holes that were here when we bought the house, and so I'm going to smooth that out and texture the ceiling and make everything smoothed out again. That's going to be the first task. Okay, so I finished all the drywall and all of my first round of spackling, and I'm going to be probably hitting some of the bigger jobs like this one I showed you a little earlier, probably 2-3 times to make sure it's smooth and thick. But all of the walls are all patched up right now, and so I'll be spackling these spots a couple more times before moving on. Alright, one tip I have for you when doing some spackling, specifically between two sheets of drywall, is to use this paper joint tape. The one I'm using has a crease in the middle, allows you to bend it, so you can use corners as well. But the tip I have is when putting this tape on the gap, you want to make sure you put a pretty thick layer of spackle on first, and then put the tape over it, so the whole tape, or all the tape, is touching spackle up against the drywall, and then use your spatula to kind of smooth it out and really stick that tape up against the wall. And then after that, you put the spackle on top of the tape to smooth it out as well. And it makes the lines look really smooth and makes it so you don't have so much sanding to do. if you decide to not use the joint tape, your first round of spackling, so this is my first round of spackling on this joint, it looks pretty smooth, but if you don't use the tape, your first round of spackling might look something like this, which is really messy and splotchy, and it's going to take a lot more times to do the spackle, a lot more sanding, which is a mess. I'm going to end up putting a plywood over this, so I'm not too worried about how this looks because it's all going to be covered up, but I wanted to show you what it looks like so you know that you know, using the tape is probably the best route. And if you put some spackle on first, then put the tape on and smooth that out, and then put spackle on top of the tape, you're going to get a pretty good seamless line. Okay, I finished all of the drywall and most of the spackling. I still have some spackling to do around the around these bowl noses down here. I've also installed a piece of wood here because I want it to be extra stable for the rock climbing wall that I'm going to be putting in for the kids. And the next phase is going to be doing some texturizing of the ceiling. All right, what I want to go over right now is how to texturize a ceiling to make it match as good as possible. So you see, this is a knockdown texturize on our ceiling, and so I'm going to show you how I'm going to plan on matching that for this spot over there. So I've done the spackling about 2 or 3 times on this, and then I've sanded it out so it's pretty smooth for the most part, and then we're going to add some texture like this. Okay, so for making the mixture for the texturizing of the ceiling, the first thing I like to do is like to add a little bit of water. So when you first get the compound out of the bucket, there's usually some air pockets in there, and it's pretty thick, and so I like to add a little bit of water to mix it up. And then since I'm doing a small job, I'm going to mix it by hand. So we'll just go. Okay, now that's all mixed together. It should be about the consistency of like pancake mix or so. And so that's where we're starting. We're going to get that compound mixture ready, and then also the texturizer tool that I'm going to be using is this one to kind of match as closely as possible to what our ceiling has. So we'll go ahead and show you how to apply that. Okay, so you get your tool, you get the compound, and you apply liberally. So you put a lot of that compound on this brush. So I'm going to mix it around a little bit since it's the first time I'm using it right now. I want to get it spread around the whole tool as much as possible. And then put a couple globs, like glob here, glob there, just so it's a little bit more unique. Once you get that on there, so to kind of show you what that looks like, you stick it on. Continue doing that until you feel like you have a pretty good, even spread over the entire area. And I like to, I don't like to put the same things right next to each other. I like to kind of spread it out a little bit, put one over there, one over here, one back over there, and so on, just to add some, just to make it unique. Show you looks like. So when you first put it on there, it's going to look kind of pointy and falling, but there should be some bigger globs, some smaller globs, just to kind of make it, give it variety, because that's how this ceiling is. So that's what it's going to look like, and we'll give it some time to dry up a little bit, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes since I've put the compound on the ceiling to texturize it. And I'm using a simple knockdown knife now. So what you do is you kind of see all these little points throughout. You basically just take that knife, and it's kind of soft and spongy on one side, and you just softly guide it across. gives it that knockdown look, makes it flat, and which is going to kind of, once it's painted and everything, it's going to look like this other piece of the ceiling. But after I've knocked that down a little bit, I'm going to wait for it to dry, give it a nice, I guess like more of a soft sanding around it, and then it'll be ready for painting. One thing to remember is anytime you are doing any kind of drywall or spackling or texturizing, any imperfections that you see before you paint are going to show through a lot more after you paint. And so I noticed that with this ceiling right here, after I texturized it and painted it, as soon as I painted it and it dried, I was able to see it looked like a little bit of a bow. It wasn't quite smooth as I would like it, and so I'm going to redo the spackling of that. Actually, I already have redone the respackling of that and have smoothed it out, so it looks a lot better now. And I'm going to now texturize it. Now, I wanted to show an alternative method to using the texturizing. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. The first one that I showed you earlier in the video was the brush. And so what I want to show you today is how you can do it, maybe with something that maybe you don't have to buy, or something that you can just do with the stuff that you have in your home. Okay, so I have my compound right here. I've added a little bit of water to it to smooth it out, and I've mixed it around so it's loose. And what I'm going to do is use this for the texturizing of the ceiling. And I don't have my brush anymore because I threw it away, and I could run to the store and get that, but I wanted to show you an alternative method of what you could do to do that. And so what I have right here is a trowel that is used for laying like the mortar on underneath the tile. You can use anything that has a flat area, and if you have a handle, that's great. It makes it a lot easier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this trowel with a grocery bag, just a normal grocery bag, right? And it's going to allow that to keep, number one, keep it clean, and number two, give it a little bit of a unique texture. And so what I'm going to do is take this compound, and depending on how much texture you want on your ceiling to match, if it's light or if it's thick, that's about how much compound you want to put on it. So I'm just going to do a little bit on here. I'm going to put a layer on there, and I'm going to start texturizing the ceiling with this, which is just stuff I found around the house. Okay, so I have my tool. I'm going to grab some compound and just put a little bit on it like this, just to smooth it out. So you can see just a little bit on there. And I'll do this several times to finish the texturing. Okay, I finished putting the texture up there, and so I'm going to let that dry for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to use a knockdown knife to smooth that out, which I'll show you that in a little bit. But the other cool thing I like about using this plastic bag is once you are done and you have all that, that leftover spackle or compound on that bag, you can just flip it inside out, and it makes it pretty easy cleanup. So I have that in there. The tool is still fairly clean. This is all put away, and so we're done from there. But let me show you kind of what the texture looks like, just so you kind of know if you're gonna match that. Let's get from this angle. So here's what the texture of the ceiling looks like, and this is what it looks like before I knock it down. So I've just put it around kind of evenly as much as possible. That I've already done and painted, but this one I'm gonna let that dry for a little bit, and then I'll knock it down and we'll go from there. Okay, now I got this knocked down. I'm gonna let it dry for several hours, maybe overnight, and then I will sand it to make it look smooth, and then paint over it and see how it looks from there. When I was building out these boxes, I wanted to make sure they matched the rest of the house. So as you see these rounded corners, these bull nose corners, I wanted to make sure they matched, and so I went ahead and did that. I've already installed the corners, and I used plastic corners, and so I used a staple gun to kind of staple those in place across the sheetrock. And then put my first coat of spackle on there. Now it's kind of messy. The job of spackle is kind of messy. I wanted to put one coat on there just to make sure everything was adhering to the drywall and that it was going to be pretty smooth and leveled out. And so that was my first coat, and now my second coat is going to go in and smooth out this. I'm going to put some more sheetrock compound on here, which is going to make that look a little bit nicer, a little more smooth. I have finished the other coat of that compound for these boxes here, and also did some sanding to make sure everything was smoothed out and level. Now when you're doing any kind of spackling, you want to make sure that you make it as smooth as possible, that you don't leave a lot of chunks or edges or anything like that in there, because the more you do, the more you have to sand and the more mess you have to clean up. And so it's best to try to make that as smooth and as clean as possible. So now that I've gotten that done, the next thing I did was we're putting in TV right up here, and our outlet was down there. And so what I did is I cut out the wall and put an outlet. I tapped into that outlet up there or down there and put a new one up there so we can hide the cords. And so finished that drywall and the spackling there, and now everything from a structural standpoint is complete. We've done a lot of spackling throughout, just a lot of dents and stuff were in here when we first moved in, so we fixed that. Also, we have this kind of thing in the middle of the wall. It's a load-bearing wall, and so when I was cutting in to do some remediation here on this side, I noticed that there was a lot of empty space on this other side. And so what I had done is I actually cut a hole into the wall here and installed some bull noses here and did the compound and sanding here. But I built out a little shelving unit in here so we can do like hold DVDs or whatever we need to have in there. So just some extra storage room, and I'll be putting a cabinet door on that. And so all the spackling on the ceiling is done throughout the whole room. Everything is pretty much complete. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean up the floor and wipe down the walls, because there's still some dust from the sanding kind of all over the place. And so I want to make sure that's all cleaned up, and then we'll get started with the painting. So for our home, the texture on our walls for the paint is actually not a spray-on texture. It's a thick or heavy or a roll brush for very rough surfaces. And so what I'm doing is I'm getting one of these roll brushes, and I'm going to go over with some primer to go over all the areas that are smoothed out from the repairs that I've done. You kind of see over there as well. And even on the ceilings and all that, this texture is the same throughout our whole basement. And so I'm going to do that first and let that dry, and then we'll paint the entire room after that's completed. All right, I've finished the painting. And I'll show you a few before and after pictures right here. I'm getting started on some tile work. So we're planning on painting the tile in here and the grout. And so what I'm gonna do is we've had to remove that vanity, and underneath it there was no tile. It looked like they just tiled around it. And so I got some tile that would fit in there. I've cut it to size, and I'm just laying those. I've mixed the mortar. I'm going to actually put tile baseboards as well around. They had wooden baseboards before, and since this is going to be in a bathroom, I would highly suggest doing tile baseboards if you're going to be doing tile here. Water does not go well with wood baseboards, so if there's any kind of room with water in it, I would suggest to do that. So we'll go ahead and get started from there. Okay, I finished grouting the tile, and again, like I mentioned over here, I'm going to be painting the tile over there. So just finished this piece, as well as the baseboards. I decided to put tile baseboards around the kitchen over here. So we have those laid and everything is ready to go. So part of the project also was we wanted to kind of update the kitchenette area that we have down here. Before it was that black tile and black grout. It was nice, but we just didn't really like the look of it, and the cost of replacing all of the tile and taking all of this out was going to be quite high. And so what we're going to try to do first is paint it and see how that looks. And so we'll kind of take you along that journey. This is the first time we've done painting tile, and so what we've done is we've put a coat of primer on the tile just to kind of help secure that paint to the tile. And then we're going to probably put one more coat of primer on here just to make sure it looks pretty white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some white tile paint on there. The paint that we're using is this Rust-Oleum floor coating. It is for tile, and it's the ultra white. And this is the step 1 base coat, and so what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple coats of this on that tile so it looks really nice. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to paint the grout lines with we have some black grout paint markers, and so we're going to go through, so it's going to kind of look like a subway tile with white tiles and black grout. And then after we do that, we're going to put this second coat, step 2, of that same Rust-Oleum floor coating. I guess not the same one, but the second coat of this. This is like a clear protective layer that we're going to be putting a couple coats on that. Now the primer that we used was just the Kills paint. We just put that on there because we like the idea of having it be more mildew and mold resistant, and so that's what we've done with this. And so we'll show you what the rest of it looks like as we keep adding more coats and make sure it looks good. I've started on the flooring with the vinyl planks. Since we're in a basement and we have concrete, wanted to make sure we had a water barrier, so I got some Centennial underlayment that I got over at Floor & Decor, and I'll lay that down first and then put the vinyl on top of that and make sure it's all locked into place. I have finished laying the vinyl planks down here in the basement. It looks really nice, especially up against the new paint. And the next step I need to do is to install the transition strips. I have some tile and that I need to put some transition strips on, as well as going down into other rooms. I want to make sure all the transitions look good. And so we'll get started with the transition strips along the tile here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark off where I need to drill the holes, and then I have a hammer drill in here that I'm going to use to drill the holes with. And then once I do that, I'm going to put some caulk in the holes with some anchors in there, and then I'll put those little metal strips on there and then screw them in so it's all tighten in place, and we'll be able to put the transition that match the flooring right on top of that. So let's kind of show you how that looks. Okay, I've just started the stairs and I've been able to do a few of them. So I'm putting the vinyl planks on the stairs as well, leading down to the basement, just so it matches the floor that we've already put in. And once I lay the laminate on top, I will be putting some wood, some MDF wood that's kind of painted white already underneath the stairs, so it will be in this gap right here, so it will look pretty nice. And then I'll be putting some little noses, some stair noses on top of that match the vinyl planks. So as I am putting these vinyl planks on the stairs, I'm using this Loctite Power Grab Ultimate. It's the clear kind. I've done some research on it, and it seems like this is going to be the best one to use for these stairs. It's an instant grab, so I don't have to put a whole lot of pressure on the stairs to wait for it to dry or anything like that. And then also with the stair noses, I'm going to be using the same caulk under that as well. What that allows is for when there's traffic coming up and down the stairs, that this caulk is more flexible than some of the other caulks out there, and that way it doesn't crack or break down the road. And so I'm trying to make this last as long as possible. Okay, the vinyl is complete on all of the steps, and I'm getting ready to do the wood to put underneath here so it looks white, as well as the noses. I've done one stair so far to see how it's going to look, just to make sure I like it. And what I've done is, so this nose right here didn't quite cover this piece of wood, and so when I put the wood here underneath that was white, you'd still see the bottom part of this nose. And so what I've done is I put the piece of wood here so it was kind of flush with this, and then what I did is I put this white piece right here, which is actually it's actually a whiteboard piece that's really thin, and I've cut that to the size I need it, and I've put that up to about here, all the way down to the floor, and then put that stair nose over that, so it looks pretty sharp. I think it looks really good. The reason why I did the whiteboard is, number one, it was thin and white, and it has a kind of a glossy look, so I like that. Plus, just for fun, having it be a whiteboard, we can draw on it and stuff. Going up the stairs, I think that would be kind of a fun thing to do. But so far, it looks pretty nice. And the noses itself, I've put them on with that caulk, that Loctite caulk that I showed you earlier, and it's really tight. It's not budging or moving. It seems like it has done a really good job. Plus it's flexible, so as we're having traffic on this and moving it, it's going to move with it, and it's not going to crack and break, and we won't have to redo that for a while. So part of the project also was we wanted to kind of update the kitchenette area that we have down here. Before, it was that black tile and black grout. It was nice, but we just didn't really like the look of it, and the cost of replacing all of the tile and taking all of this out was going to be quite high. And so what we're going to try to do first is paint it and see how that looks. And so we'll kind of take you along that journey. This is the first time we've done painting tile. And so what we've done is we've put a coat of primer on the tile just to kind of help secure that paint to the tile. And then we're going to probably put one more coat of primer on here just to make sure it looks pretty white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some white tile paint on there. The paint that we're using is this Rust-Oleum floor coating. It is for tile, and it's the ultra white. And this is the step 1 base coat. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a couple coats of this on that tile so it looks really nice. And then what we're actually going to do is we're gonna paint the grout lines with we have some black grout paint markers. And so we're gonna go through, so it's gonna kind of look like a subway tile with white tiles and black grout. And then after we do that, we're gonna put this second coat, step 2, of that same Rust-Oleum floor coating. I guess not the same one, but the second coat of that. This is like a clear protective layer that we're gonna be putting a couple coats on that. Now the primer that we used was just the Kills paint. We just put that on there because we like the idea of having it be more mildew and mold resistant, and so that's what we've done with this. And so we'll show you what the rest of it looks like as we keep adding more coats and make sure it looks good. With the tile painted and the vanity installed, we are now officially done with the basement. I like the look of the painted tile. We did the semi-gloss coating on top, which kind of makes it pop out a little bit more. But overall, it looks a ton better and saved us a ton of money doing the painting rather than tearing it all out. So here's a little bit of a quick tour through the whole basement. We'll kind of start over here. The other tile that we did was around the fireplace. You can see the flooring all looks good and is all in. Got the curtain rods up as well as a rock climbing wall. The kids have been having a blast down here on that. And the stairs. The stairs have stayed in good shape with the traffic going up and down. But overall, it's a lot of items in here, but if you take it one by one, if you're gonna remodel your own basement, do it step by step, it's really not something that's too challenging to take on. So thanks for watching the video, and let me know what you think.